Hello YouTube, it's me Bergie, and I'm here with my spoiler review of Magnus Chase and the Hammer of Thor by Rick Riordan. Again, I keep on wanting to say the Thor of Hammer. Not correct. Why can't I get this right? So anyway, first off, more in-depth summary of what happens in this book. First off, this takes place a couple of months, I want to say 2 or 3 months after the first book, Magnus Chase and the Sword of Summer. In this book, we follow Magnus and his friends trying to retrieve Thor's hammer, obviously, since that's the name of the book. His hammer is being held captive by two giants named Thrym and Thringa. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, so please excuse me. At the same time, Magnus and his friends have to deal with Loki, who's pretty much orchestrating this entire thing that's going on. And in this, Loki arranges a marriage between Thrym and Sam, who is his daughter, and Magnus's friend, who is also, she is also a Valkyrie. Again, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but she's not dead. She is a Valkyrie who kind of takes the dead souls into Valhalla. So this marriage is happening between Sam and Thrym in order to strengthen both sides of that family. And Loki also, he wants the hammer, we think. And then also he wants another sword that comes into play in order to break free of his prison, because of course he is kind of tied Prometheus style to a rock, but has a snake dripping poison onto his face, which is not very fun. So yeah, that is pretty much the plot of this story. Now, in this, a lot of social issues are brought up. In a lot of Rick Riordan's books, he does address social issues, which is very nice. And Percy Jackson and the Olympians, I guess for that one you can say was kind of, the only thing that I can really think of was the relationship between, oh god, what's his name? I forget both of their names, but I guess the interracial relationship, but of course that wasn't to the forefront, and honestly in this day and age that shouldn't affect anybody. That shouldn't be like a social issue. That should be like okay. In the Heroes of Olympus series, it was holy crap, Nico. Why, I'm not very good at remembering right now. It was Nico being gay. Everybody finding out that he was gay. And again, of course, that should not be a huge problem for anybody because people are gay and that happens. However, in that case, it did not feel as fitting, I guess, as the relationship in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. It kind of seemed forced, and I felt like a lot of other people felt the same way. Like, you really did not have a clue that Nico was gay beforehand, which of course that's okay. Not everybody gives off hints and stuff that they're gay, but it just felt not wrong, but it felt out of place. And that kind of happened again in this one, although in this one it was more so out of place. With Nico, after the initial shock of finding out he was gay, he everybody just loves him and Will's relationship. Like, honestly, it's one of the favorite ships of this fandom. So everybody kind of got used to it. Now, this will probably happen for this, but I just felt like a lot of the social issues addressed in Magnus Chase and the Hammer of Thor was kind of really, again, like I said in my non-spoiler review, flashing lights that were kind of like, here I am, this is like a big thing, even though these issues should not be in the forefront. It should not be driving the plot. The plot should have other driving forces, I think. Now, the social issues mentioned in this were transgender/gender fluid, which was kind of the main thing and kind of the thing that I have the most problem with, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Again, I'm not hating on people who are transgender or gender fluid. I'm not hating, but I'm kind of disappointed in how it was included. I wish it was included a lot more naturally than I guess it was, instead of making it such a huge problem. Not a problem, a huge aspect of the books. But again, I can kind of understand why, because it is an issue that needs to be dealt with, and it kind of needs to be pushed in people's faces, but I kind of wish it wasn't pushed in people's faces. So I'm kind of on the fence on how I feel about this. Anyway, two other kind of minor social issues addressed were cultural appropriation and mean cops. Again, they were minor, so it wasn't the forefront, and I'm not as disappointed, but the fact that we have to include this in books and have it acknowledged, I mean, I know it needs to be acknowledged. I'm really kind of digging myself into a hole, aren't I? But trying to say what I mean and it's not coming out right. Okay, so for like the mean cops, we as a society need to punish mean cops. However, we cannot push the thought that all cops are bad or mean or wrong or just abusing their power. And again, this was a minor thing, but it was still mentioned, so I feel like I should mention it as well. Now for cultural appropriation, of course, I'm white, so I'm not really the best at saying this, but I feel like cultural appropriation should not be seen as a bad thing. Isn't it a saying that someone who is like copying you is a form of appreciation, or it's a good thing. It shows a good thing. So why is cultural appropriation the same? Now, I agree that people using it in a wrong way is bad, or people making fun of it is bad, or people being racist, that's bad. However, I feel like saying people are appropriating another culture is almost just as bad. Instead, I think we should be teaching people about different cultures so people get an understanding of why certain aspects of the culture are important, instead of just saying, no, you're white, you can't do this, no, you're African American, you can't do this, no, you're Asian, you can't do something. Putting people in certain boxes, that is not right. I think we should be teaching everybody about all of our cultures, and therefore people can use the representations of these cultures in a proper and respectful way. So that was a big problem for me. Now, for the issue of transgender and gender fluid, that has kind of risen to the forefront in our society as well, and it's nice that it is addressed. However, it was kind of blaring at you. It was thrown in your faces. And honestly, that doesn't help anything either. It should just kind of feel natural and not be kind of stated 5 or 6 times. And I don't know, just the way it was addressed, it just did not sit well with me. Because honestly, I'm a person who believes I don't care if you're male, female, or transgender, or whatever, gender fluid. I'll see you as a person. I don't see you as that sex. And kind of in the book, it was kind of shown that, oh, he's a human, but the sex is kind of more important. You know what I mean? Which that kind of really sounds negative, and I don't mean it that way. I love that Rick Riordan is addressing these social issues, but I feel like he could have done it with a little more grace and a little more helpfulness, if you know what I'm saying. But anyway, I'm going to stop digging myself in a hole with that, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people will probably hate on me because of that. But anyway, let's get into talking about the characters. Now, Magnus Chase, he is the main character, and you gotta love him. He reminds me so much of Percy that it's kind of scary, but at the same time, they're not exactly the same character. I can't really put a name or a trait or a characteristic that kind of separates them or differentiates between them. I just know that there is a difference. And it seems minor, but at the same time, it's a big enough difference that they're not the same, which is quite confusing. I need to think more. I need to analyze more how they act and their characteristics and that kind of stuff in order to pinpoint how they're different, but like they're the same but they're different. Confusing, I know, but it's the truth. I think. I feel like other people will kind of agree with me that they're similar enough, but different as well. I'm gonna stop kind of going back and forth and saying that and go on to Sam. She's still a badass. I'm pretty sure I said she was a badass in the first book, so she's still a badass, but she kind of seems more real because we see more of her weaknesses popping through, and I really enjoy seeing that because it makes her seem like a real person, like an everyday person. And that was nice because you like characters who seem real, not that are just like so heroic and so badass that they're like untouchable. So it was good to see that. Blitz, he was not really in the forefront while still being in the forefront. So there was like a group of 5 characters that were the main focus. He was like the least important of the 5. Not to be mean or anything, but yeah, he didn't have as much as a role like he did in the first book. I feel like that was where he was focused on, and instead in this one we were kind of focusing more on Hearthstone, who we found out his backstory and his past, and that was really interesting and very sad as well because he had a horrible past. His dad is a friggin' asshole. I just wanted to kill him. I hope he gets what he deserves in the next coming books because I'm pretty sure we're gonna see him again. Yeah, I just hated him and I felt so sorry for Hearthstone, and he just has a tragic life and I feel so bad. Now as for TJ, Mallory, and Halfborn, who were kind of the hallway mates of Magnus and also the new character who I'll talk about in a little bit. They were not in the forefront at all. They were mentioned a couple of times, but they were not part of the 5 characters that were the most important. So I kind of was sad because I do like them a lot. I remember liking them even though I don't remember much from the first book, but I do remember liking them and enjoying their little banter as a group. Now finally, Alex Fiero. I don't know how to address it because she is the transgender. I'm going to go with she because that's how she was most of the time in the book. She identified more as a she, but she is gender fluid. So she goes between feeling like a male sometimes and feeling like a female other times. Most of the time she was a female. Now she is also a daughter or son of Loki, but unlike Sam, she kind of accepts her powers that her father gives her more so. So she shapeshifts, and that kind of, I guess, goes along with the fact that she's gender fluid, so she goes between 2 genders. And honestly, she seemed powerful, but I don't know how she's this powerful. Like, there was not really an explanation for where she gained this power. Like, she just showed up in Valhalla and was, like, really strong, which I'm not gonna lie, she is a badass too, just like her sister, but I just don't see where it came from. Like, it just seemed like, oh, she's just powerful. Now let's talk about the gods now. Honestly, I did not like any of the gods that we were presented with. Literally all of the ones, okay, not literally, most of the gods we were presented with were like just so unimpressive. Like, they just did not seem like gods. When you read Percy Jackson or even the Heroes of Olympus, you feel like those gods are super strong and you kind of are God-fearing. Same with the Egyptian series, the Kane Chronicles. Those gods, they're kind of scary. Yes, there are aspects of them that are funny, and if they weren't gods, you would laugh at them, but they are gods and you feel like they are gods, and therefore you are kind of scared of them. Not the case whatsoever with these Norse gods. They do not feel like gods at all. Even like when Sam was explaining to her boyfriend about the Norse gods, she was like, they're not necessarily gods. They're not like Allah or whatever, but I don't remember the exact explanation. They're more like really powerful figures or something. And I was like, they don't even seem that powerful. They're not. Because, okay, Thor is pathetically ignorant and stupid. He just is brawn and no brains. But even the brawn, he doesn't seem that strong. Especially when he doesn't have his hammer, which was for the most of this book. Another god we met was Heimdall, who is the guard of the Rainbow Bridge. I forget what it's called because I'm not good with Norse mythology, but he's the guard of that, and he just, all he did was take selfies and wanted to take selfies, and that was just like, really? I know you're kind of modernizing the gods, but that's kind of making them so unimposing and like not ungodlike. So the only god that I thought felt like a god was Loki, and that was because of how crazy and how powerful and how manipulative he is. And he feels and seems evil. No one else feels like they could blast you out of this world except for Loki. And that sucks because once Ragnarok comes around, which I have a feeling it will, and I'll get into that during my predictions, I don't think like the Inherjar side, they're not gonna do well because the gods that they have are like half-cocked. They're not even they're not even half-cocked. They have no bullets in their guns, which is sad. To see that they are just like not strong at all. And it's kind of the same with the giants. For example, Utgard Loki, that's his name. He seemed like a coward, and he didn't seem like he was very much in charge of the other giants that he was king of. Same with Thrym. He was too concerned with getting married than anything else. And Thrygna, she seemed like she could be evil, but the thing is, it was all emotion and no actions. Like, she did not act out her anger, which was like a bit of a letdown. Like, you could tell that she was angry and she wanted to do something evil, but it never happened. Like, it didn't even seem like it was possible that would happen. I was just sad. So let's go into positives and negatives now. I know you're going to think that I think very negatively of this book, which after kind of hearing myself talk about this, it does seem that way and like that. But I do have some positives along with negatives. Okay, so first positive, Annabeth. She's brought in finally at the end, and that was, again, honestly, the saving grace of this book, because it gives me hope for the following books, because she mentions Percy, so I have a feeling that Percy is going to be introduced to the Norse world, and that's going to be great because I love me some Percy. On the other side of this, the negative side of this, Annabeth was literally mentioned so many times to the point where I felt like Magnus was relying on her way too much. Even though she wasn't present and he literally only mentioned her, the amount of times her name was mentioned was almost as many times as Sam or Alex's name was mentioned, and that's really not right for a Norse book when she's kind of more focused on the Greek side. Even though, yeah, she's had a big part because Magnus is her cousin, it's just, I don't know, I felt like they were relying too much on Annabeth, or Magnus was relying too much on her or talking about her way too much. Positive side. Social issues, like I said before, it was great. I love the fact that Rick Riordan includes them in his books. On the negative side, however, again, it just didn't fit well. It didn't seem natural to the storyline. It didn't feel like it was perfectly interwoven. It just felt like it was like thrown in there, or dropped in there, and then just forced. On the positive side, back again, the pop culture references, especially when Magnus Chase said something about Kylo Ren, I was just like, oh my god, they're combining my extreme love for Kylo Ren with a Rick Riordan book, and it's magical. That it's a fangirl's dream when their fandoms kind of interweave, and Rick Riordan always does this, and I love it. I remember in the last book he did mention Doctor Who, and I was like, oh my god, my fangirl heart. And again with Star Wars, so I love that. Okay, on the negative, the plot. Again, it was too long for no reason, and also it wasn't a really unique storyline. Like, it seemed, at least the bridal part, it reminded me so much of Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, except in this case the wedding kind of went through and happened, and I just didn't feel like it was anything new or unique. And it was also predictable, so hence why I don't think I thought it was very unique, because I could see where everything was going and there was no like surprise really. So that's basically it. So now into my predictions. At the end of the book, it's revealed that in order to stop Loki, they have to take a sea voyage to Norway? Scandinavia, and in order to get into the right realm in order to stop Loki. And again, that seems like the premise for Heroes of Olympus, which was, again, not very unique. However, I don't think this voyage is going to happen in the 3rd book. I'm under the impression that this is going to be a 5-book series, so I think this sea voyage isn't going to happen until the 4th book. In the 3rd book, I believe that some other quest is going to happen, and at the end of it, that is when Percy and Magnus are going to meet and consult each other about what's going to happen. Now, I have 2 thoughts for the 5th book, if this is a 5-book series. On the one hand, I think this is when Ragnarok will happen, and either only the Norse gods or all the Norse related people, they're going to fight it, or on the other hand, I feel like the Ragnarok end of the world kind of thing will be its own series where all of the mythologies are going to come together, because not just Ragnarok's going to happen, but like Doomsday in the Greek world and the Roman world, and then also something that's going to have to happen with the Egyptian world, and it's all going to be connected somehow, and therefore all of the different mythologies, the Canes, Percy and Annabeth, Jason, and all of them, and then now Magnus and his friends are going to have to come together in order to defeat Ragnarok, or the end of the world. So either it's going to be specifically just in the Norse series and only Magnus and his friends are going to deal with it, or I think Ragnarok is going to coincide with like the end of the world for all the other mythologies, and therefore be brought into a new series where all of them finally come together and try to save the world from all of the evils that have kind of come about. So yeah, I don't know if that was very understandable or very clearly stated, but I hope you know what I mean. And yeah, that's all I have to say, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.